All right. It's attempt two here. I encountered some trouble with the strength of my network. I did a reboot, kind of a soft one. We'll see if it we have any luck. I'm waiting for my additional heads to join in here as I've got the Boston Bruins game going on. Boston currently up 1-0 after David Pasternak's goal. Um, let's see. Hey yo.
Uh-huh.
Little brief cameo from Christian there. He was only dropping in if it was absolutely necessary. But let's see. You got Damien sending a request to jump in. Boom. Yeah, let's try again.
Yeah.
There we go. Take two is successful. Yeah. So now I actually get to do my monologue here in front of an actual audience, as opposed to being a bit of a time filler. So maybe this is a bit fortunate that the timing worked out the way that it did. But that whole sequence of events, like obviously Pasternak ended up redeeming himself. With his goal after having taken a very emotions-based penalty uh, to start this game off. But it is actually funny how, and it's not, and I guess it's not terribly surprising given the backstory between the teams, the personalities involved. Uh, just and what it's come to embody in the matchup between the two. But I think that uh, Boston versus Florida Mark II is kind of a reminder that as much as you can break down matchups by way of comparing systems and roster constructions and how they match up against one another, and winner, uh, best of series, like it's just like sometimes your analysis can end up being very reductivist because the biggest determining factors are very intangible emotion based stuff, and just like things that are not as quantifiable and like energy and whatnot, especially when there's a background that's as significant and like testy as it's been. And now of course like that narrative is continuing to perpetuate itself because like the Bennett Marchand thing is definitely seems to be what's at the center of the discourse revolving around that series right now. I honestly think that you could make the case that the two Eastern semifinals are kind of like things that you can analyze in completely different directions. Because even though Carolina and New York has become a heated rivalry, and like you there's obviously been some moments, Jacob Truba, that can be considered defining moments. It's like I still think that like the adding up the ones and zeros and like scrutinizing things like special teams play is like more of a defining characteristic for that matchup than Boston versus Florida.
Yeah, I agree with that. And obviously the Rangers, their power play has been absolutely lethal. And it's the same thing with Edmonton. So it's like there are some teams that like when you look at the power play units and just some of the like offense that they're generating, especially with the odd man rush or the odd man advantage, like it's been insane. And like you said with the X factor, we've seen a lot of chippiness. Obviously, again, it's kind of been I think some of the beauty in the Bruins Panthers series. I believe Eric Cherry will be on about the halfway mark to jump in and give us some comments on what he's thinking in the series.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun, something to look forward to. I'm excited to see what his take is on it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Uh, yeah, honestly, like, I think it's funny because, the Rangers PP unit might be the only one in the league that really rivals that of Edmonton's, and I would go as far as to say is the Oilers is the only one that could overcome them potentially. And I think it's like it comes down to the fact that the Rangers have developed a pretty good acumen over the last few seasons, and that's visibly on display. And then, of course, you have like someone with a terrific resume on that side of the things behind the bench, and Peter Laviolette, who like really was like the best retread hire that has ever been made, pretty much, and really like the most appropriate guy of anybody who is on the market for that to for getting the most out of guys with deployments and structure and strategy. Like in Carolina has like nominally and in a lot of results a solid unit too, but like their body of work doesn't have like the same uh acumen and like build up and track record of success as New York's does. So it makes sense that things have played out the way that they have. And of course, when Carolina finally made their beginning of like their comeback effort in that series, of course, like their special teams play finally looked up to the task.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even going back to like Laviolette a little bit, because I think you're right. I think when we look at some series that you look at the shots generated by Carolina, you look at, where they're generating them from. And again, a lot of it's like you're pointing out, as far as like Brendan Moore and like kind of where he focuses with his schemes and his setup and everything. And I think it's one of those things where, again, even like for hockey fans, when you look at Laviolette, this year we look at the Capitals. Obviously, again, last year was a really tough year for the Caps. And, you look at Carberry and it's like, he did a great job this season with that team, getting a team that a lot of people don't think should have been in the playoffs. But, obviously, he got the most from those guys. But when I look at last year, I would not blame Laviolette at all for what happened to Washington. And for New York, I mean, it was a great hire, obviously. I mean, and when you have a series like this, a lot of it, like, yeah, you need players to make big plays at big times. You need discipline, but at the same time, I think that you start seeing, you have to look at the coaching battle too. And I think Laviolette, when you look at all of his experience, I mean, especially with the Flyers, I mean, he did have a lot of success with that team. So then you have to start kind of thinking like, hey, like this is going to be a huge impact on this series. And I mean, Laviolette, he's just such a great coach, and it is kind of weird to see him behind the Rangers bench, though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it was kind of like an inevitability given his cup of coffee there for his only NHL experience, having it being something of a homecoming for him, or like as much as it could be, other than if the Bruins had finally given him that gig after they passed over him for it back in the day, which of course was a big heartbreaker for him and probably has served as a big motivator for a lot of his success subsequently. If I had to assume, it's like it is definitely odd for me, like because it's like it's kind of things coming full circle. Not only just like uh, uh, Torts, like obviously has flip sides in that rivalry for us, and it's like you know, I like obviously like had a contentious outlook on the teams like that he's coached over the years just by nature of like the Lightning. Like that was a very competitive and very like emotional conference finals back in '04, which was like a formative time in my Flyers fandom. Uh and then of course like on the other side of the rivalry, like they're like that 2011-12 team, actually the Rangers had a perfect 6-0 record against the Flyers that year. But at the same time, like I definitely identified with him because he seemed like a guy who built like a similar culture and identity. So I definitely always respected him. So like it's kind of like you know uh like the hand fitting the glove that like effectively the two are kind of filling that cultural identity spot just in opposite locker rooms.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think with the series too, I mean, two of the things that really stuck out to me, obviously, the biggest thing is the goalie battles. Obviously, again, regular season, Chessie had, he had a tough month or two where everybody was kind of giving up on him. But I mean, he's pretty much in second in a lot of the categories where he's got a 9.2 save right now, and he's got a GSAA of 6.56, which is pretty crazy. Obviously, again, Carolina, if they're gonna win, they need goaltending. The other player that I did, obviously we've talked about him a lot because we all like him, is Kuzi, good old Kuznetsov. The thing I love about him, though, is just his BDE that he brings to this team, where it's like, you're down 3-0 in a series and you're trying to Michigan. And for me, I love it because it's just, I feel like that cockiness and that confidence is really, that's what is going to help a team that, is down in the series fight back.
Yeah, I like it's. I think part of I'll note this is like I think part of Shesterkin's success has been the fact that on average going into game four, I mean their shot attempts had a 3.9% chance of turning into a goal because like they're just their uh, system and roster construction just hasn't lent itself to many high danger chances. But like at the same time, like part of it is like you do need to have some level of confidence in order to create and generate. So it's like to have some sort of catalyst via victory like that, and to have certain individual performances and showings can go a long way. Like it's good. Like I do definitely think it's a long shot for them to complete a reverse sweep, but they're not going to roll over either.
Oh, yeah.
Like I have a feeling like there's a little bit of meaningful hockey left to be played.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, another crazy stat though that I did see though is Panarin having 4 game winning goals already in this postseason is just an absolute absurd stat.
Yeah. He it's funny because uh through their time together in the CBJ environment, uh like it's often mistaken that Tortorella is disdainful of offensive players, but what it really is that he has this perceived threshold of energy and intensity he wants to see from guys that play for him irrespective of their playing style. And it's like Panarin is, still to this day, via that experience together, one of Tort's favorite players in the entire league. And it's like when he has the chance to show killer instinct, that's really one of those times where that energy really shines through the most.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think but another series too though, like it's one of those years where I feel like all 4 games have just been great. All the matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving it. But the Vancouver Edmonton series has been just such an extreme series
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, we want to talk about close series, and the thing that's like just it's been boggling is you look at game one, you know, everybody thought Vancouver was done. I mean, being down 4-1, and they came back. I mean, a lot. I know, like even Subban, I think, like went to bed and like you wake up the next day and you're like, what just happened? But I think whoever's going to win the series is going to be the team that's going to actually be able to hold and keep the lead. Because when we look at Edmonton from past years, it's always been a matter of, hey, can they hold a lead? Because over the last couple of years, they've had good leads in a lot of the series and they've ended up blowing them. So, I mean, but I think it's true for both teams. And when you look at just the insanity between the two teams, where like, let's look in the net, right? You look Sills, third string goalie. He's got a GSAA of a negative .37 versus a save of 8.99. where Skinner is like a negative 2.59 GSAA with an 88.8 save. So it's like, again, both goalies are, obviously, again, kind of not making the big saves when they need to. But when you look at Edmonton, just their offense is insane. Like McDavid first in points, first in assists in the postseason. He's averaging like 2.343 points per game, which is just absolutely insane. And again, Draisaitl first in goals created, and he's also tied in first in the postseason with Zach Hyman, Nikushkin, and Trocheck with 4 power play goals. So, I mean, that's a lot of offense. Hyman's tied for first with 9 goals. So it's like when you're looking at just how many goals in the offense that these 3 guys are just creating, it's insane. And for Vancouver, I will give them so much credit in game 1, where like to not give Connor McDavid, not allow him to have a shot on net for the first time in his playoff career is phenomenal. But then again, game 2, McDavid breaks through, has points on every single goal, and so I mean, the series has just been so back and forth.
Yeah. And it's like it's tough. Because like a traditional like setup, like you definitely like have to have in order to contain one of those top percentile guys, especially like a center with his particular set of attributes, or like someone like Nathan McKinnon. Like your only real hope is to have something to match that intensity, whether it be individually or by committee, or it's to have an incredible amount of luck on your side. The suppression definitely worked in game 1, and they turned that into a phenomenal comeback. But it's like on most nights you're going to see a night from Connor McDavid more similar to the one that he had in game 2. So they really, really are going to have an appropriate answer going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, I will give Vancouver credit. I mean, they've been opportunists all season, and they still have been,
Yeah.
obviously. So it's going to be interesting to see that.
Yeah, analyzing them, and I think Jay Fresh hit upon this. The PDO regression did happen. It's just that it happened towards the mean rather than to it entirely or below it. But it's like what that turns into is like, they look like absolute like demigods, like pure like Herculean level at the beginning of the season, and that's not going to happen all year long. But they still like statistically turned into a really good team, and they're gonna be like if they have like a successful postseason run, it's gonna still be anomalous enough and defying a lot of conventions to where I think a lot of franchises are going to at least consider the possibility of reevaluating possibilities in construction of rosters and strategic approach and coaching to where it's actually going in kind of a regressive direction.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I definitely see that. I mean, it's just wild because again, you look at the team too, and I mean, they've been so good with their bottom 6. And I mean, I don't know what it is about Joshua, but like, I swear to God, he's probably one of the best players when it comes to game 1s.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've definitely noticed that too.
So it's gonna be good, but I mean, the only real note that to add into Dallas, obviously, again, we all know how good Tyler Seguin has been this season, 5-on-5. So him getting that GWG last night is not surprising. But I mean, Jake Andre, I have to give the kid so much credit. I'm so happy that he's on his game again. And I mean, it's nice to see, and that's the thing was right now, and we look at the first series, and for the Jets, well, we have the better goalie, obviously. Unfortunately, that did not work out for him because they got buzzsawed. And again, Dallas, you go in this series, and you're like, well, we have the better goalie. And Georgiev played great in the first round, but I mean, he made the timely saves anyway. His stats definitely are not sexy for the postseason right now, but I thought he made a lot of really good, consistent saves in that series. Where right now, looking at him, he's at like a -3 GSAA versus an 8.8, almost an 8.9 save. So like Andrew has been lights out, and this is a series where I think both teams have been really good with the transition game and also limiting scoring chances. So, I mean, if the play keeps going now, I mean, Georgiev's definitely going to have to, do what he did in the first game. I mean, again, obviously the Jets did get dominated in the shots and the chances. So, I mean, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, in this case, I think that, round one, I think Colorado overcame Winnipeg because it was a matchup that was defined by, individual cumulative 1v1s, so to speak. And even despite the fact that Winnipeg had probably a good roster construction, and uh, the proper systemic thinking as much as uh, uh, what's it called, bonus farewell to him upon his retirement, is kind of like he was definitely a very traditionalist kind of coach. It's like, and it worked out for them in the regular season matchup, but the writing was kind of on the wall that the in the playoffs is going to go in the opposite direction. It's like in the Dallas Colorado case, there are enough of those individual 1v1s where they have where they're standing on either equal footing or have an advantage to where it is playing out in their favor, and it seems like that's a pretty strong possibility that that's the series is going to play out with them as the victor. And it's funny because like that's even bearing in mind that Joe Pavelski has really, really fallen off in this postseason. It's like he had a solid regular season showing, and all of a sudden it feels like he's hit the wall, just magically in the postseason, which is like not great timing, but it doesn't seem to be withholding them as a group.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start talking about that beautiful OHL final, my dude?
Yeah, the I the as I kind of talked about in my article today, like with the London Knights, or the Drummondville Voltigeurs, according to their logo on the CHL website, which is apparently drunk, probably had too many of those cheap beers at Budweiser Gardens. Like I can't even. That really is a series where like rather than not being able to analyze it from a thinking man's perspective, due to high emotions, like is the case in the Bruins versus Panthers series, like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, one of these teams has significantly more roster depth than the other one, and they were the best team in the league while playing in a much tougher conference, so they're just basically dominating them, like a combined 17-2, and their power play, London's power play, being over 50% for the series in efficacy. It's like you could just basically boil it down to their raw offensive volume stats. Like Denver Barkey had 4 point showing in game two, and he arguably wasn't even the best player on the ice. That's just sort of how the series is going for the Oshawa Generals. Like Max McHugh hitting a Michigan goal when the score is already 7-0. It's like, bruh.
So, besides staying out of the box, what would you want to see Oshawa do to like maybe not lose by a touchdown?
Um, I mean, they are short of a blue chip prospect in the form of Beckett Seneca, who's just like the guy. He's got their best hands. He's got the right physical profile. He's slick, but he's also a tall dude, which like is probably going to factor into why he ultimately along with his late postseason surge, is why he's going to get like overlooked in the. I mean, he's going to get overvalued in the draft. Is just because of that strong emphasis that there are in those tools. Not that he's like the forward version of Artur Vasilyev, where he's just like that long reach is the primary selling point. He does have legit tools. I just don't see him as top 10 caliber, even though the conversation is increasingly shifting in that way. But he is undeniably their best player. So it's just like they need him there to like the shot creation. But beyond that, like I I think that they need to do more of what Moose Jaw, spearheaded by the likes of Jaeger Ferguson, Pittsburgh boy Braden Jaeger. They need to do more to take away the passing lanes and just erase the shot creation. I think it's just like there's I every time that London wants to start a cycle, it seems like they're dictating the pace of the play with the puck as much as they want. So it's just like if they can reduce that just a little bit, even I could imagine that they're at least not going to you know continuously get bashed over the head by that London forward group. And also plenty of credit to 2024 draft eligible Sam Dickinson, who's been doing really well. He's looking almost Lidstrom-like in how he's been able to, you know, drive the play from the blue line. Like I think they could also afford to maybe take away and apply some pressure on the back end as well to just to sort of nullify the play before it really starts.
Yeah, sounds like I mean, good strategy, good point. I mean, obviously it's not gonna be easy. London is when you have guys like freaking Barkey and freaking Bonk, because Bonk's on their team too, right?
Yeah, there's like it's kind of hard to strategize against their power play because I mean you have like a center slash winger working the point, and then you have a defenseman as the bumper option, which is definitely unconventional, and I imagine that it's something that's maybe worth evaluating, but like I don't really see that ever being replicated on the NHL level because it's like I'm just like, man, where did Dale get like an epiphany about that? Uh, let's see. um, you know, so it's like I guess that definitely when you're up against the team with just that many like high end prospects and just like you're facing like the top line like even is just three guys who already have were touted like NHL draft picks in the form of Barkey, Cowan, and Julian, and then Casper Haltonen, second round pick, San Jose, highest pick finished player in this most recent draft class. Like your depth is that significant where a guy as high end as him who had a hat trick is playing on line three. It's tough. Like especially when you just don't have that many options, your best players out.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely.
Yeah, well, we had our grit and grind specialist drop in, decked out in the Pasternak jersey. Got the very Canadian aesthetic going as well. Uh,
Hear that?
came in just when we were seeking, some consultation on what you think some of the like the emotions and like some of that very gritty like physical play that you're so fond of has been dictating things in the NHL postseason, particularly in that Boston Florida matchup.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been as I'm sitting here in this cold, dirty, uh, ratted out basement here. I definitely have noticed the, uh, the searing heat that is emitting through the game that is between Florida and Boston, and I can definitely say that it definitely. Uh, I could definitely say that from my perspective is I think that it kind of you can sum it up this way. You know, it's uh, when I look at the Toronto Boston game, it was very close, very, very tight. When I look at the rivalry that's going on between these guys, it kind of goes back to a couple the roots of the previous years that we faced them, and I kind of see a lot of the old school coming out, especially on both teams, and both teams are heavy hitters, and so the physicality is one of the most physical I've seen out of the series, between any of the other series, I should say, and so yeah, when I look at I'm an old school hockey guy. When I'm looking at the old school hockey, that's where I'm seeing it right now. I mean, what you're seeing a lot of, bad calls, or I should say, dirty. There are a lot of dirty hits, dirty calls, things like that, and it's not really a very, in terms of the leadership roles, it's kind of been really tough, especially, you could say on both sides, but especially on the Bruins, because we're trying to, I think, establish what it means to be a captain, and now we don't have Marchand in this game, and so this is a good test of the team. Right now, the team's been up. I've been kind of peeking at it once in a while, and it goes to show you don't really need when you don't have the guy who's giving you the most penalty minutes in the playoffs, especially right now. It's kind of showing a lot. And even on paper, I always was thinking that when this rivalry is coming up, it's kind of like Steiner math, and it's sort of like, hold on one second. Like every team's created equal, and especially these two teams. But when I see this year, it's like the players that Florida has, it brings the odds drastically down. So you can really get into that whole mathematics, from 50% to 25% thing, and they have guys that were previously that were on the Sabres, so a lot of those guys very very talented, and you see like what their benefit has been this year, just having brought up these guys, and you see where the Boston's having trouble in the leadership role, and I think having somebody who's more of a leadership role in the locker room. I mean, I always, in my opinion, it's a tough decision to say, like putting Marchand or not, or having somebody like Charlie McAvoy, but see, these guys have the most penalty minutes going on this year, and I'm looking at it like, you got to hit hard, you got to do all these things to get the team riled up, but at the same time, you don't want to end up in the box, you don't want to end up getting in, getting yourself in a bad, giving yourself a bad look per se.
Yeah.
So I look at a guy like Charlie Coyle right now. He's been a good leader, I think, in my opinion. He's been in the team just as almost as long as some of the other guys, other than Marchand's been there the longest. But a guy like Coyle has been doing good. A guy like Lindholm, he's only been on the team a couple years, but he's very knowledgeable. So what's up? So I got a lot of company.
Oh yeah. No. Honestly though, to your point too, McAvoy, when we talk about leadership, especially without Marchand tonight, McAvoy did start off the game with a pretty big clean hit on Sam Bennett. So I think that definitely supports a lot of kind of where you're going towards as far as stepping up, having that energy, being that next guy up mentality. And McAvoy definitely brings the intensity every game he plays. And again, same thing with Marchand as far as I think you have to play the game with passion and intensity, but you definitely don't want to go over that line where you end up putting your team on the shorthanded, being shorthanded.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
That's been, the biggest down. That's been, if it wasn't for putting, bringing the team into the situation like that. I mean, you look at the last game, how many goals they let up just from a 4-minute major. It's like, and I mean, and you can look at the call and say, hey, maybe it wasn't warranted to be a major, but maybe, it still is a major at the end of the day. It's still, it's a big detrimental aspect to a playoff game. And, so I feel like, if you have somebody who's more seasoned, I think that's the biggest hole right now when I look at the struggle with the Bruins against the Flyers, because I think both these teams
Panthers
face each other. The Panthers. I feel like both these teams, hit off each other, they're pretty pretty equally. You know, especially the last year. I mean, you look at last year's playoffs; it was crazy. You know, crazy how close it was. I mean, pretty much the Toronto game was a replication of that in a way. You know, which was a surprise, but that was a really good series. You know, so but looking at that, then it's like going into Florida. It's like you gotta, you know, if as a Bruins fan, you know, if you're going to be coming off of there looking like that's a tough, you know, matchup, even though on paper, really, you could say it probably wasn't as tough of a matchup as it turned out to be. This series, already knowing that this is going to be a tough matchup, it's like you gotta have that presence of like, hey guys, put your head together. You know, we have a good D, you have a good, you know, the goaltending's been good, the D's been good, but you know, you just got to get, you know, the players to be in the level-headed, you know, in that mindset of, hey, don't be stumbling out there, don't be, you know, throwing bad hits. You know, it's just the whole thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I look at it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think on paper, though, I think the big thing, and we've talked about it too, is just Boston's lack of center depth has been a huge issue this year. Where to me, the series, it kind of looks like they have one scoring line and then just three checking lines. And unfortunately for Boston, it's not the 1990s where you can be coming out here rolling, you know, a top line with, you know, three checking lines, neutral zone trapping the other team, and then just, you know, winning those one goal games. And even for the Bruins, I mean, look how great it went for them in the early 2000s against the Canadians, you know?
Yeah.
So for that, I think that's a big thing. But the other thing is, I mean, Swayman right now is the best goalie in the playoffs, and I've seen some crazy shit being said about him. But like when you look at Swayman's dominance, and I mean, again, I've seen people blame him for them losing so far, and I'm like, dude, you guys are insane because right now he has the highest save in GSAA. His saves a 9.31. His GSAA is a 7.93, which are leading both categories.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, his playoff. I mean, obviously his playoff. You know, or what's the vocabulary I want to say here? But like, you know, just his seasoning in the playoffs hasn't fully been developed in a way that we know. Like he's the playoff guy, but he consistently does show, especially in the regular season, like, hey, he's always been willing to step it up and prove everybody wrong. You know, people have always I've always heard of doubts from him, and maybe not so much in the beginning, but definitely at times, you know, here and there, because of, you know, when you have a goalie like Ullmark and him kind of going back and forth, it's like, all right, we'll go to the seasoned guy, the guy that's already had, you know, the older guy that he's already got the experience, more playoff experience, things like that. You know, it's like, hey, let's lean on Ullmark, you know, because that's probably the only solution here. But, you know, to me, I think it's like, no, you know, Swayman right now is definitely a part of the aspect of what gives the team the optimism, I think. And he's been playing really good. So, you know, his slip ups are not from him. It's a lot of it's just the chemistry, and but you have to get the people to develop that chemistry. You know, you need the people to do that. Like a Bergeron, you know, and that's, or a centerman that can fill that role. You know, I don't know if you think we lost Damien here, but that's my take on that.
Yeah, as was pointed out by our gracious comment section moderator, that was Sam Reinhart that was on the receiving end of that check at the beginning, as opposed to Sam Bennett. But Damien did have the right idea. It is important to set the tone. That also, it's worth noting Omar had the same amount of playoff starts before playing in Boston as Swayman did, but
Yeah.
like they're kind of on equal footing when it comes to playing in big games. It's just like Omar is just older, but it's like I think it's worth examining. Like there is definitely a big discrepancy between the Pims, like because like you know, as much as like as I've noted that the that there is a you know, where was I going with this? As much as there's
My
like
bad.
an
I'm just
emotional component, yeah, all good. As much as there's like a, emotional component, you definitely do have to go about it the right way. And like Boston is going to the box at a more frequent rate than Florida is in this series. But it's like the course of events being defined the way they are, it's like there's a greater amount of buildup in the Toronto series, just like those two having played each other with there being like, stakes uh, in the past. It's like it, it's just I think the difference was that as beyond the fact that Boston's roster construction was good enough to counter that of Toronto, it's like I think Toronto just sort of treated it as like a foregone conclusion that they were going to lose. Confidence is just still so much of an important
Yeah.
uh, part of a matchup that it makes sense that there was less intensity in this matchup than there is in this brewing like Florida Boston rivalry.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I completely agree, and that's it. We'll see what we'll see. I'm curious to see, especially in this game, what effects happen without having Marchand now that he has an upper body injury or something to that extent. But like, when you don't have a guy, or when you don't have the people who are putting up the most penalty minutes, it's funny how the team still is able to rally up, and But not to put anything down on Marchand, but I think Marchand is obviously, probably the current greatest Bruins player in the team right now, as far because of just how long he's been on the Bruins team, obviously the most, and in
Yeah.
terms of like the ones on the roster now. But like as a leader, it can be a little tricky, to understand where his mindset is, and
Um.
you know,
So I'm gonna use like a little bit of like perspectives from like the outside and also his own words in his Players Tribune article to kind of define where he is. It's like the internal culture of the team inside that dressing room is probably the best thing that organization has going for its operations because it's always been positive. It's always been better in the dressing room than it has been at the very top for like ever since like Bergeron his predecessor became like the focal point of the culture. And it's like beyond that, like the on ice officials, like you wouldn't expect it, but like they really respect him. So like they
yeah,
get, they don't give him the benefit of the doubt with the whistle, but in interactions, like there's never any sort of trouble. Which is like with him being a liaison and a representative of the coach, it just made the most sense to have someone who has good rapport with those
yeah,
guys. Um, and then like as he describes, like him playing at the edge is just like he's always had a chip on his shoulder due to being overlooked due to his height. Like if he didn't, play with the mindset of I'm going to do whatever it takes to win, and that it requires towing over the line. And sometimes I've stepped over it, which has made me unpopular. But if I didn't do it, like I would have never played in the QMJHL, even never mind being in the NHL and had the level of success that I've had. And so it's like it all centers on it all kind of comes back to his attitude and how he fits into that culture as a cornerstone, and also just like how he perceives himself and like how he uh establishes himself as an important part of the game.
right. Totally agree. Yeah. I don't want to divulge too much into the Bruins Panthers series, but that's definitely as far as the current what I Don Cherry am currently seeing, not Don Cherry, the imitation of Don Cherry,
Eric
if we
Cherry.
call it that. Yeah, I don't even know my own name.
uh,
But
man.
Yep.
Uh,
Pretty Don Cherry though.
yeah,
so
but hopefully he's watching. Maybe I got to work on the accent a little, but as I work on the Don Cherry accent, I'll divulge into the character more. But that's something that down the road, more company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did promise some AHL coverage this week because I did get away from it last time around. I want to focus on it a bit more. So it's funny looking at respectively the Bruins and Flyers affiliates outcomes because you could definitely identify a lot of what's going on internally with those orgs that are just representative of ongoing issues to where there needs to be some sort of shakeup probably. Like I understand that the Lehigh Valley Phantoms were probably always going to be a little overmatched by the Hershey Bears, although to their credit, they did have that shutout win against them in game 3, which like definitely like an absolute Linsanity run moment, however brief it was by Cal Peterson in between the pipes. But it's like, I think that really like, I think that it's time for like an abdication into just like the Ian LaPerriere era within the organization to come to an end. Like he wasn't even a good penalty kill coach for us, and now he's been trusted with prospect dev. And it's like it just seems like every prospect in our pipeline is just becoming stagnant when they go there, and it's to the point where like it kind of defeats the purpose of having your prospects stay in the AHL as long as they can, and just until they're absolutely NHL ready. When you have someone like him leading the way there, and to where it's like even when we had like Bobby Brink and like these other high ceiling guys like join up with the team, it's like I mean this isn't going to help us go on a run. It should, but it's not going to happen because like guys are just stalling out. And then you had like Massimo Rizzo getting signed to his ATO after winning the national championship again with Denver. And then it's just like he's riding the pine, basically going through like a de facto development camp when he's already going to have his dev camp in like 2 months. Kolosov was the backup goaltender the whole time after all that time it took for us to, get him over from Belarus. After he had spent the year on loan with his KHL club, they had him join up after the season ends. It's like you're gonna have him playing like 2 games and then not see any postseason time. And then you kind of see that in perhaps an even more extreme version of this with the Providence Bruins. They just had their season end this past week, as well as the hands of Hartford Wolfpack losing 3-1 in the best of 5. And it's like with the Bruins, it's really become like a repeat phenomenon where they get a pretty good regular season seeding and then just flame out in the postseason. And it's like, and there's always going to be volatility with these teams with the call-ups and things like that. But it's like, I don't see how like you can just like consistently have these many like just disappointing postseason showings and not identify that there's something wrong. I guess the biggest objective when you're looking at it from the overarching NHL standpoint is like you gotta have like these guys prepped to take the next step, and it has worked out because like these later round selections when they've been able to play at the big club had been pretty surprising in the form of like Mason Lohrei and Matthew Patra before the unfortunate shoulder injury. Or wait, yeah, no, never mind. Forget it, because he has not hit his AHL eligibility yet. But guys in that vein, I should say, generally, it's like, but it's just like when you have just that many organizational woes, it's like, at what point are you going to do some reflection and just like just start to change what's going on down in your pipeline? And even though it's been like a couple of weeks now, like you can even like for another one of our brand's primary teams, I feel like Wilkes-Barre Scranton has kind of gone through a similar thing because they got upset as the higher seed, and it's like I guess part of the issue is like, you know, and you can kind of see it of the guys who've been called up due to injuries in Pittsburgh kind of being from the scrap heap. Like the roster construction with the WBS Penguins is just not that good. And then of course like JD Forrest ended up getting the short end of the stick. But it's like, I mean, rather than firing the coach, it's like I feel like what I think is most identifiable there is it shows that like throughout a couple of regimes, and especially like prominently in like the Ron Hextall era, like the later round picking by the the Pens is just, and like their failure to develop those picks has been like noteworthy for a while, and it's hard to hit on those later round selections, but like it's still like it's such an essential function of being a general manager to do well on those later round picks and for player dev to turn them into some players where they at least hit their ceiling,
Yeah.
which is like, you know, easier to do than like expanding it, even though teams seem to draft as if the opposite is true. But it's like you just I am curious to see like who Kyle Dubas wants as to fill that spot, as we've discussed before, because it's going to be someone he knows, I'm sure. It's apparent he's apparently not in the running for Sheldon Keefe reunion in any capacity, at least not in the immediate future, because it seems like Keefe is just going to like take the money he's due the next couple of years and then see what the market is like then, because the Leafs are just going to pay him for 2 years for nothing because they fired him before his extension kicked in. But it's like, and I am interested, but it's just like, why are you resting the shoulders on the coach, things on the shoulders of the coach, rather than like acknowledging that this was just like the fault of multiple regimes not doing well in that capacity?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's like Detroit. You have like the greatest scouts who find you all this gold, then they want to get paid, and you're like, nah, I'm not going to pay you. And then they go to Dallas, and you look at what obviously, and we've covered beat it to death already, but you look at obviously what those scouts have done in Dallas, and I feel like again, it's in a lot of leagues too. When we look at like, oh well, this team did such a great job of it, and then that becomes the new standard, that becomes the new expectation. When I mean, you have to be realistic here. Like, just because, you look at a couple of organizations that can nail late picks and be great at something like that, again, not everybody's going to be able to be great at that. Like,
No.
No,
it just doesn't happen.
it's hard, but like it's just such a key component, and it's like, and it's also worth noting that like you know, that we're evaluating like the worst possible regimes as well. I am curious to see if Dubas takes a step forward in that, because I mean, he did have a decent track record in terms of surprising with some of those later first round and later selections, and having them on good dev curves in his time in Toronto. But I don't really like how things are getting a foot established when it comes to how things are going in the AHL pipeline, because it seems like to me like he was throwing out the baby with the water with that move. But I also understand that he's probably trying to establish a standard that's like specific to his method of operations, and it's perhaps that necessitates, at least in his eyes, getting someone he's familiar with and knows what his organizational direction is going to be. Just see if it works.
Yeah. I'm also just to set up that nice little advertisement, really plug it. But I'm really excited to see what ends up happening in the PWHL draft next year. It's gonna be wild. Obviously, New York State in the first pick. It's gonna be interesting with Howie Draper stepping away. He'll still be an advisor position, but he's gonna be coaching the University of Alberta's women's hockey team
Yep.
next season. I did not expect that, but I'm excited to see what that goes. And oh yeah, it's almost 8. So
Yeah.
yeah, Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, we can we have some leeway because it seems like Christian is gonna have a bit of a delayed start. So like there are it's still like some bullet points we can cover a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit more before we kick over into our big finish.
yeah. I was just trying to
Uh,
plug it.
yeah,
Yeah, and on
you
the PWHL too, just a quick comment from Eric Cherry here. I think this last game, if you didn't watch how intense it was, it probably would have benefited more to see line 4 out there more often, especially in those first few overtimes. I mean, they went them pretty long, but it looked like a pretty exhausting game, and I wanted some action. But it was cool to see them come out at the last overtime. And but yeah, if I was in that coaching position, I would be like line 4 overtime, get out there right now. Just and that's something that we kind of talked about in the article, all that stuff. But
Yep.
something I agree.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good brief setup because I mean, obviously Christian, Kelsey, and Matt will be talking about all of that, all the PWHL action on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But
There should be you know some pretty solid perspectives there. You know, definitely like it's interesting because like we've kind of gone over it before like there's like some uh contrast of styles, but that makes it intriguing enough where like analysis of that is not going to be reductivist, even with the very blue collar approach that Boston has, and like has been pretty visible. Like even just with generating offense in the way they do, a lot of it is by establishing a really solid work rate in front of the net. It's been visible, especially like in the most essential goals of the series so far.
yep,
But yeah, let's see. Uh, the Syracuse Crunch had their season come to a close last week as well. Or rather, they ended the season of the Rochester Americans winning 3-2 in that best of five. Bit of a tough hang for the Buffalo affiliate as they fought tooth and nail with the Tampa Bay affiliate that just came up short. Um, they'll be up against Syracuse will be up against the Cleveland Monsters. Good old CBJ in the next round. While Hershey and Hartford will face off. Interesting that Detroit came up as their affiliates in the Grand Rapids Griffins. Fantastic roster. So maybe their setbacks that they've had with scouting and player dev in the long run were overcomable. Like Sebastian Casas had like a pretty easy path with this crop. They just have a phenomenal roster. They emerged forward victorious over the Rockford Ice Hogs 3-1. Uh, the Coachella Valley Firebirds overcame the Calgary Wranglers 3-1. Let's see, in 3-1, whereas the Ontario Reign defeated the Abbotsford Canucks 3-0. Grand Rapids is awaiting the victor of the Milwaukee Admirals Texas Stars series, which is occurring right now. Can I get a live score update, please? Milwaukee is up 3-2 early in the third period. So some good Yaroslav Askarov action there. Yeah. So what else have we got? Oh wait, no, not. Yeah. Never mind. I was thinking of Wallstat for a second. Some of those goalies that were blue chips that had such tremendous high ceilings going to their draft kind of like mixed together in my brain sometimes. But let's see. And then Coachella Valley and Ontario will face off next round. Let's see. Oh, let's see. We got ourselves the the launch over. If you're wanting that PWHL coverage, you can kick over to IG. That as Christian was a few minutes behind schedule, but not too much. But to quickly wrap up with some of the junior stuff, obviously the Clark Cup Finals in the USHL has been going on. Some ebbs and flows there, but the Fargo Force have taken a 2-0 lead, as you'll know if you've been keeping up with my graphics. Some of those guys are already have exclusive rights with the NHL. Some of them you'll be hearing about in NCAA D1 in the next couple of years. Some promising guys. I'll have more info on them coming your way in the coming times. The CHL is off tonight. It kicks back up tomorrow night. It's like, but just a quick rundown on that. Every series, is a 2-0 deficit. The OHL already having been covered. The WHL, Moose Jaw, as alluded to, as the 2-0 edge over the Portland Winterhawks. One game, just got away from them. Just got away from Portland. There's the other one. They looked pretty out of their depth. Just couldn't really get the offense going. And then I would say Moose Jaw was pretty opportunistic and good at creating high danger chances, which translated into them having a phenomenal game in the PDO department. And then the QMJHL, Riley Mercer has 2 shutouts in between the pipes for Andre Drummondville, as we know them. That is the younger brother of New Jersey Devil Dawson Mercer, who is really shooting to maybe get a pro contract, hopefully even play alongside his older brother, which is the aspiration he has stated that he has. So it's a good story there. Alexis Gendron has been phenomenal. Philadelphia Flyers prospect who's kind of bounced around different developmental settings, but has really been clutch in these big moments for the Voltigeurs. So that's been pretty fun to watch. It's interesting that Baie-Comeau, like the Drakkar, they dropped both of the first 2 games at home after having been the best team in the regular season. The Voltigeurs definitely punched above their weight in those road games to start things off. So, good for them because they definitely attained more success than the lower seed is even aiming for most of the time in the first 2 games of a series. And that'll about do it for the junior hockey and developmental leagues coverage this week. So now with that all taken care of, we can roll over into our big finish. So I'll start things off. I have kind of an ignominious thing to say about the CHL. As much as I've been enjoying watching the better presentation for these games, it's just I think that in the panel discussions and even the play-by-play, it's a lot of the time it's these guys are supposed to be journalists that do background research on these topics and have good notes prepared. And it's it seems to me like the most cursory stuff has been done in and analyzing and preparing the broadcast teams for these championship series, which is pretty bad for something that's being nationally televised. I'm pretty disappointed in TSN for that. And I honestly feel like the CHL deserves better, but it's I do also think that it's kind of their own cross to bear as well. The Canadian Hockey League is a lot like the that's big brother, the National Hockey League, that it functions as the primary de facto feeder system for. It's just not good at marketing its product and getting things like that taken care of. And I think that then it goes back to an attitude I've talked about before, but I really want to emphasize it as a bullet point now. It's like rather than having that regulation that prevents CHL players from directly transferring to the AHL as a means of protecting the CHL's bottom line, it's like I think really what you need to do is if you want the CHL to make money and to sustain itself, it's like you know, media deals should be better and it should be taken seriously by the people who are presenting it and like being like a product that people actually want to consume and engage with rather than like making sure your best stars are available to ensure that like that the barns are full every night. It's like I just think that they should just get better at presenting this on television than they've been doing, and and it's not like with all the money that there is circulating in Hockey Canada that they don't have the means to do it themselves. But it's like even if
Yeah.
you so much as to just had to ask the NHL to broker a deal and really get these things adequately prepared for and all of that, rather than having like these know nothings talking about it and just like embarrassing themselves to even where I haven't watched nearly as many games as I'd like. I have enough to like analyze the league and what's been going on, especially in these postseason runs. But like to the point where I even know people who are getting paid to do this on national television, or to where I know more than them, it's like it's not good. Like, and I just feel like things really need to change there, and it would do a lot better for the league than the current status quo.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. So, Eric, do you have a big finish for today, my guy?
Uh,
Something
big thing.
grinding your gears, something you want to see?
Uh, well, I think something that really turned my head was seeing how much the Rangers really blew, almost swept the hell out of the Canes. So I mean, that's just the first thing I want to get out of the way. I'm like, oh, I was all in for the Canes because for me, I'm like this team, and even this last game they had, they really showed how much heart they have because they were able to, basically keep themselves in the game. But like, it's something that I'm like, you know this Rangers team is really crazy, really hard hitting, and I just want to point that out because it's something I've noticed. Couldn't really tell you too many things about the individual players or anything like that, but I can definitely just by what I'm seeing, it's definitely been surprising to me to see that, and seeing that they're like sort of like considered the underdog, between the two. I think Carolina's. I'm pretty sure they're the favorite. But yeah, that's something. The other series I've been looking at. I think don't quote me on that. But anyway, yeah. Other than that, yeah. It's I probably haven't said this before, but um, hope to see you in the next life, Jack. I'm sorry to Jack Edwards, because it's been nice to hear his last year. I guess this is something talking about broadcasting again. Nesson is. I mean, we talked really negative about Nesson and stuff like that, and they've kind of really grinded my gears a lot of years. So, especially their network. But no, wholeheartedly, I hope he, whatever he does next is going to be, a good thing, good thing to see, whatever he does. But it'd be nice to see, going off for the broadcasting thing, you see some guys that hopefully might step up to, bring some, hockey knowledge in some capacity, and things like that. And yeah, I mean, as far as the series goes, I mean, just hoping to see cleaner hockey. I mean, it's something I won't normally say. I mean, I'm kind of more, I'm more about, the heavy hitting, violent side of hockey, but at the same time, you got to have, pretty clean games. And it seems to be that way for the most part, and I think this has been a year where you're kind of seeing a lot of guys really showing up to, like multiple guys, not just like one particular guy in a team, but many guys in the team just really hitting it. Like I said about the Rangers, same thing. even in the other series. But yeah, my take is just we'll see what happens, and hopefully we have a good rest of the playoff run.
Yeah. So a couple of quick hits for me. First off, just I guess pretty much taking what you were saying there. Yeah, last night I think I saw definitely the softest 5-minute major on Lexi Gia. That was a super soft call
Yeah.
on a clean hockey play. But besides that, looking at the PWHL just real fast, it's been great hockey. It's been great playoff hockey. This Boston Montreal series is the rivalry that this league needs to be built off of. Reminds me a lot of the rivalry in the NHL with just the physicality, with the emotions, with just the one-on-one battles of superstars, of just everybody grinding and seeing big performances from goaltending. I mean, to go off of Kelsey's point, Boston start building a statue for Aaron Frankel outside the Songa Center. But my big quick little hit on the NHL is just I love how close all the series kind of look. I mean, obviously Carolina, New York, 3-1, but I think both teams have played very hard and have been pretty consistent. Obviously Carolina, I think they need a little bit more consistent goaltending, but in general, I think it's a round where I wouldn't be super surprised to see all 4 games go to a game 7. But yeah, right now playoff time, best time for hockey, best on the year, and I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah, that call really disappointed me because and it's not to beat a dead horse, but it's it really did go against the established PWHL ethos this season. It's
Mm.
just it's definitely there haven't been too many monumental blunders where I'm that's a bad fuck up in the context of how the league has been run on the ice this year, but that is it is on the list as one of the few prominent ones that really spring to mind. Also, I gotta say, Eric Cherry, your choice of "See You in the Next Life" was interesting because I don't think Jack Edwards is passing away anytime soon.
No,
But
yeah. No, I was just throwing that because I'm like, I don't know when I don't think I'll be seeing him after this. I don't know. Don doesn't really hang out with guys like him, and or the Cherry, I should say, to take his last name, not his first name, because I'm trying to imitate the Cherry part, not the Don part. But
at large, I would also describe the Rangers as pretty clear cut as the best team in the East, but Carolina is definitely regarded as a team that at least had something to match them because of their tight man-to-man defense. But the way it's played out, they just haven't generated a lot of good scoring chances. They're not getting enough shots from the slot, and that's had a big impact on the game. But we did see something better from them in Game 4, so we'll see how
yeah,
it goes. See if the energy starts to shift a bit, to make a Jaylen Brown quote. Uh, yeah, so I think that's a good spot to leave off on. A bit of a different configuration, kind of a different energy this time around. Things there will be a bit of this will be like the 3 primary heads in our standard configuration going forward, but there might be some rotation. Christian might still drop in from time to time. We might finally get our long-awaited debut of our fellow goaltending expert Matthew Scott one of these days. But yeah, I think pretty satisfying, high energy, debut of this new primary BSH Cast outlook. Thanks for tuning in. We got some good viewership peaks and some great engagement this time around. We'll see everybody next week. Have a good one.